This story is titled, My Late Wife's Sister-in-Law Called the Cops on Me for Abandoning My Son because her daughter babysits, but she's the one who's abusive. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Hey Reddit, my late wife's SL called the cops on me for abandoning my son because her daughter babysits for me. But turns out she's the one who's abusive. Anna, her daughter, actually introduced me to Reddit and told me to write our story here, so here it goes. So I'm a 42-year-old guy, and a year ago I lost my wife during childbirth. She was the love of my life, and we'd been together for over 8 years. Losing her shattered me, but I had to pull myself together for our son. He's the only piece of her I have left, and I'd do anything to give him the life she would have wanted for. My late wife's family stepped in to help after she passed, which I appreciated. Her parents especially have been amazing, taking care of my son on weekends so I can catch a break. But her sister-in-law, Rachel? That's a whole different story. Rachel's always been difficult. Even back when my wife was alive, Rachel was the kind of person who thrived on drama and control. She has a daughter, Anna, who's 18 now, but growing up, Anna never had it easy. I could see it every time we visited Rachel's house or during family gatherings. Rachel treated Anna like an inconvenience, always barking orders at her, calling her names, and blaming her for the smallest things. If Anna spilled a drink, Rachel would blow up, screaming about how useless she was. My wife and I hated seeing it, but Rachel always brushed us off when we tried to step in. Over the years, I started helping Anna whenever I could. If Rachel was being too harsh, I'd distract her with some excuse to calm things down. If Anna needed help with school or someone to talk to, my wife and I were there for her. We'd invite her over for dinner or include her in family outings just to give her a break from her mom. My wife was so protective of Anna. She'd always say, "That girl deserves so much better." And she was right. But here's the thing. Rachel hated it. Every time we stepped in to help Anna, her behavior would get worse. She'd accuse us of spoiling Anna or undermining her authority as a parent. I remember one Christmas when Anna was about 14. We gave her a new backpack for school because hers was falling apart. Rachel snapped at us in front of everyone saying, if she wanted a new bag, she should have worked for it. Stop making her think life is easy. It was ridiculous. She didn't even let Anna keep it. We found out later she threw it away. When my wife passed away, things got even harder. Anna started coming around more often, which I didn't mind. She loved spending time with my son. And honestly, I think being around him gave her a sense of peace she didn't have at home. But Rachel saw it as an opportunity to meddle. It started small. Rachel would make snide comments about how I couldn't possibly raise a baby on my own. A boy needs a mother, she'd say, as if I didn't already feel the weight of my wife's absence every single day. Then she'd shift her focus to Anna, claiming I was taking advantage of her by letting her help out with the baby. The irony? Anna wanted to help. She'd light up whenever she was holding my son or playing with him. It was like she finally had a space where she wasn't being yelled at or criticized. One day, during a family dinner at her parents' house, Anna mentioned she was looking for a job. She wanted to start earning her own money and gain some independence from her mom. That's when it hit me. I needed help with my son, and Anna needed work. It seemed like the perfect solution. When I asked Anna if she'd be interested in babysitting for me, her face lit up. Really? You'd trust me with him? She asked, her voice filled with excitement. Of course I trusted her. She'd practically been a second sister to my son already, and she was great with kids. I offered her the job on the spot, and she said yes without hesitation. Rachel's reaction, though? Oh, she lost it. When I brought it up to her, thinking she'd be happy Anna had found work, she went off. She's too young to take on that kind of responsibility, she snapped. And what makes you think you can just pull her into your mess of a life? I was stunned. It's just babysitting, I told her. Anna wants the job, and I need the help. It's a win-win. But Rachel wasn't having it. She accused me of exploiting Anna, saying I was using her as a replacement for my wife. You're just dumping your kid on her because you can't handle being a father, she sneered. It was insulting, not just to me, but to Anna too. She made it sound like Anna wasn't capable of making her own decision, like she was some helpless child instead of the mature, hardworking teenager I knew her to be. Despite Rachel's protests, Anna started babysitting for me a few days later. And let me tell you, it was a game changer. My son adored her. He'd giggle and clap his hands whenever she walked through the door. With Anna's help, I could finally work longer hours, catch up on bills, and even sleep through the night without constantly worrying about my son. For the first time since my wife passed, I felt like I could breathe. But Rachel wasn't done. Her passive aggressiveness turned into outright hostility. She'd show up unannounced at my apartment, making snide comments about how my home wasn't kid-friendly enough, or how Anna was spending too much time there. She'd complain about the smell of my cooking. Yes, I cook spicy food, deal with it, and act like I was somehow ruining Anna's life by giving her a job. The worst part was how Rachel's behavior started affecting Anna. I noticed she became more withdrawn, quieter than usual. One day she showed up with a red mark on her arm. When I asked her about it, she shrugged it off, saying, "It's nothing. Mom just got a little upset." It wasn't nothing, though. I could see it in her eyes. She was tired, beaten down by years of living with someone who treated her like an inconvenience. It all came to a head one night when Anna showed up at my door, crying. Her face was bruised, her lip was split, and she looked absolutely terrified. "Can I stay here tonight?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mom kicked me out. My heart broke. Of course, I let her in. I set her up on the couch and told her she could stay as long as she needed. The next morning, I made breakfast and left for work like usual. I told her I'd be back by late afternoon and to text me if she needed anything. She gave me a small smile and nodded. I thought everything was under control. Anna was scheduled to babysit that day anyway, so I figured I'd sort things out with Rachel when I got home. I thought it was just a typical mother-daughter argument that had gone too far. I had no idea what was about to happen. I was at work, powering through a stack of emails, when my phone buzzed. It was Anna. That wasn't unusual. She'd text me if she had questions about my son or needed help with something. But this wasn't a text. It was a call. And as soon as I answered, I could tell something was wrong. Her voice was shaky, barely above a whisper. "Can you come home, please? It's bad." "What's wrong, Anna? Is the baby okay?" I asked, my heart racing. "He's fine," she said quickly, but I could hear the panic in her voice. "It's my mom. She came here. She's gone now, but can you just come home?" I didn't need to hear more. "I'll be there in 15 minutes, I said, already grabbing my keys. When I got to my apartment, the sight that greeted me stopped me cold. The front door was slightly ajar, and inside, the place looked like it had been hit by a tornado. Furniture was overturned, picture frames were smashed, and my son's toys were scattered everywhere. My heart sank as I stepped further inside. Anna was sitting on the floor near the couch, hugging her knees. Her face was pale, and her hair was disheveled. She looked like she'd been through hell. My son was in his playpen, thankfully unharmed but fussing, clearly upset by the chaos around him. "Anna?" I said softly, crouching down next to her. "What happened?" She looked up at me, her eyes red and puffy from crying. "She came here," she said, her voice trembling. "She found out I was staying here somehow, and she lost it." I helped Anna up and got her to sit on the couch, brushing off the shards of broken glass first. She took a shaky breath, trying to steady herself. "She's been asking around," Anna began, her voice wavering. "She went to my friends' houses, the coffee shop I go to, even the library. She was trying to figure out where I was. I guess someone told her they saw me here." She paused, wiping her eyes. "She showed up maybe an hour after you left. At first, I didn't answer the door, but she kept banging and yelling, saying she knew I was here. I didn't want her to wake the baby, so I opened the door. I clenched my fists, already furious at the thought of Rachel showing up uninvited, let alone what came next. She started screaming at me," Anna continued, "calling me a traitor, saying I was ungrateful and stupid for staying here. I told her I wasn't going back with her, and that just made her angrier. She grabbed my arm and tried to drag me out, but I pulled away." Anna looked down at her hands, her fingers trembling. "That's when she started throwing things. She knocked over the coffee table, smashed a lamp. She grabbed one of your pictures off the wall and threw it across the room. She was out of control." "What about you?" I asked gently, noticing the bruise forming on her arm. "Did she hurt you?" Anna hesitated, then nodded. "When I tried to stop her from breaking more stuff, she shoved me. I hit the wall pretty hard. She kept yelling, saying I had to come home by tonight or else. Then she just stormed out." "Or else what?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Anna's eyes filled with tears. She didn't say, just that I'd regret it if I didn't come home. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of emotions raging inside me. Anger, frustration, worry. It was all too much. I looked around the wrecked apartment, then back at Anna. She looked so small, so defeated, like she'd been carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders for years. "You're not going back there," I said firmly. Anna shook her head. "But if I don't, you're not going back there," I repeated, cutting her off. "You're staying here, and tomorrow, we're going to the police." Anna looked at me, her eyes wide with fear and uncertainty. "The police? What if they don't believe me? What if they think I'm just being dramatic? Wait, she is my mother after all?" I can see she was panicking. That poor girl. "They'll believe you," I said, my voice steady. "And if they don't, I'll make them. She can't keep doing this, Anna. She hurt you. She trashed my home, And she threatened you. That's enough. For a moment, Anna didn't say anything. Then she nodded, her lips trembling as she fought back more tears. Okay, she whispered. I spent the rest of the night cleaning up the mess Rachel had left behind. Every broken object, every overturned piece of furniture, felt like a reminder of how far Rachel was willing to go to maintain control over Anna. But I wasn't going to let her win. Not this time. The next morning started quietly enough. Anna seemed tense but determined as I left for work. I'll be back soon, I told her, trying to reassure her. If anything happens, call me. She nodded, managing a faint smile, but I could tell she was still shaken from the night before. Rachel's warning about returning home by tonight was hanging over her like a storm cloud. I hadn't been at work long when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Normally, I'd ignore it, but something told me to answer. This is Officer Bradley with the local PD. Is this Alex? The voice on the other end asked. My stomach sank. Yeah, this is me. What's going on? I stammered. We've received a report about your son. We're at your residence now. You need to come home immediately, he said, his tone sharp. If you don't, we'll be contacting Child Protective Services. I swear my heart stopped. My son? CPS? What the hell was going on? I didn't even ask for details. I just grabbed my keys and bolted out of the office, leaving my laptop and half a cup of coffee behind. When I pulled up to my apartment, I saw a police cruiser parked outside. My stomach churned as I ran up the stairs. The door to my apartment was wide open, and 2 officers were standing in my living room. One of them was holding my son, who looked terrified, his tiny hands clutching the officer's uniform. His face was red and streaked with tears. What the hell is going on? I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady as I reached for my son. Are you the father? The officer holding my son asked. When I nodded, he handed him back to me. The relief of holding my son in my arms was overwhelming, but it was short-lived. We received a report that you left your child home alone with no supervision, the other officer said, his expression serious, almost accusatory. What? That's not true, I said. Anna, my babysitter, is here. She's watching him right now. The officer glanced at his partner, then back at me. We've spoken to Anna. She says she's your babysitter, but her mother reported that she was forced into this situation and that you've been treating her like a surrogate mother for your child. What? I was stunned. That's ridiculous. Anna agreed to babysit. She's been doing it for months and she's great at it. I pay her fairly, and she's never said anything about being uncomfortable. Before the officers could respond, I heard a familiar voice from the hallway. He's lying! Rachel's shrill voice cut through the air like a knife. She stormed into the apartment, her face flushed with rage. He's been using my daughter as free labor, treating her like she's his wife or something. This is abuse! I stared at her, completely dumbfounded. Are you serious right now? I shot back. Anna is my babysitter. That's it. She wanted the job. She needs the money. Rachel crossed her arms, glaring at me. She's 18. She shouldn't be stuck here raising your kid while you're off doing God knows what. The officers tried to calm things down, but Rachel wasn't having it. She kept going, accusing me of taking advantage of Anna and claiming I was using her because I couldn't take care of my own son. She even had the audacity to suggest that CPS should step in because I was unfit to be a parent. My blood was boiling, but I knew yelling wouldn't help. I have cameras in the living room, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. They record everything. If you want proof that I've done nothing wrong, I can show you. The officers exchanged a glance, then nodded. All right, one of them said. Let's take a look. I led them to my computer and pulled up the footage. My hands were shaking as I navigated through the files. First, I showed them the footage from that morning. It showed Anna feeding my son, playing with him, and even cleaning up after breakfast. Nothing out of the ordinary. Then I pulled up last night's footage. It showed Anna arriving at my door, her face bruised and tear-streaked. The audio caught her saying, "Mom kicked me out. Can I stay here tonight?" And me responding, "Of course. You can sleep on the couch." The officers watched silently as the footage played. Rachel, meanwhile, was fuming. "This doesn't prove anything," she snapped. "He's just cherry-picking what he wants you to see." "Hang on," I said, scrolling to the part of the footage from earlier that day. "This is what you need to see." The video showed Rachel breaking into my apartment while I was at work. She was yelling at Anna, demanding that she leave. Anna's voice was shaky but firm as she said, "I can't leave. I'm watching the baby." Then came the part that made my stomach churn. Rachel screamed, "I don't care about that kid. Let him cry himself to death for all I care." The room went silent. Even the officers looked taken aback. One of them turned to Rachel. "Ma'am, do you have anything to say about this?" Rachel's face turned red. "She's my daughter," she shouted. "I have every right to get her out of this mess." The cops asked if I wanted to press charges. Damn right, I did. One of the officers stepped forward and told her, "Breaking into someone's home is a crime, ma'am, and your behavior today has put this child at risk. We're going to have to take you into custody." Rachel lost it. She started screaming and flailing as the officers cuffed her. "You're ruining my life!" she shouted at me. "You're a terrible father, and CPS will take that kid away from you." As they escorted her out, I felt a mix of relief and exhaustion. But the chaos wasn't over yet. Later that evening, Anna came back. She was in tears, furious that I had her mom arrested. "You didn't have to go that far," she yelled. "She's my mom, no matter what she did." I tried to explain. "Anna, I did this to protect my son. Your mom broke into my house and put him in danger." But she wasn't listening. "You don't understand what this is going to do to my family," she shouted before storming out. I sat down on the couch, my son asleep in my arms, feeling completely drained. I knew I'd done the right thing, but I couldn't shake the guilt. Had I just made everything worse? The hours after Rachel's arrest were a blur. I held my son tightly, watching him sleep in my arms, and tried to process what the hell had just happened. The relief of knowing Rachel couldn't hurt us anymore was quickly overshadowed by the nagging feeling that this was far from over. The next morning, I woke up to a flurry of missed calls and text messages. Word of Rachel's arrest had spread fast. Some messages were supportive, like Mrs. Henderson, my neighbor, who wrote, "It's about time someone stood up to her," but most were less kind. Rachel's family had jumped on the situation like vultures, accusing me of blowing things out of proportion and tearing their family apart. "Why would you get Rachel arrested?" one text read. "She was just trying to look out for her daughter. You didn't have to ruin her life." Another one simply said, "You're disgusting." I stared at my phone, a knot forming in my stomach. I'd expected backlash, but seeing it in writing made it all feel so much worse. Later that day, I got a call from Anna's aunt, Rachel's sister. She was livid. "I don't know what your problem is, but you had no right to involve the police," she yelled before I could even say hello. "Rachel was just trying to protect her daughter from being overworked. You've made this 100 times worse." I tried to stay calm. "She broke into my house," I said firmly. "She threatened my son's safety. What was I supposed to do? Just let her get away with it?" Her tone shifted slightly, but the anger was still there. "You don't understand how hard this is for Anna. You've put her in an impossible position. She's stuck between you and her mom now. Do you even care about what this is doing to her?" That one hit hard. I did care about Anna, and I hated that she was caught in the middle of all this. But what choice did I have? Rachel had crossed a line. Several, actually. And I wasn't going to let her actions go unchecked. As the week went on, it became clear that Rachel's arrest had divided the neighborhood. A few neighbors avoided me entirely, refusing to meet my eyes when I passed by. One guy, who I barely even knew, muttered "troublemaker" under his breath as I walked by with my son. It was like walking around with a target on my back. The whispers were the worst. I'd catch snippets of conversations as I took out the trash or walked to my car. "I heard he's using that poor girl like a maid," one woman said to her friend. "Can you believe he actually called the cops on Rachel? Over babysitting?" Another added. I tried to ignore it, but it wasn't easy. Every glance, every muttered comment felt like a dagger. I knew what Rachel had done was wrong, but it seemed like half the neighborhood thought I was the villain. It didn't help that Anna had disappeared. She wasn't babysitting anymore, and I hadn't heard from her since the night she stormed out. A week after the incident, I decided to reach out to Anna. I didn't want to push her, but I also didn't want to leave things unresolved. I sent her a text. "Hey Anna, I hope you're doing okay. I'm here if you want to talk." Hours went by with no response. I tried to focus on work and taking care of my son, but my mind kept drifting back to Anna. What was she thinking? Was she okay? I hated the thought of her feeling like she couldn't come to me anymore. Finally, late that evening, my phone buzzed. It was Anna. Her message was short and to the point. "I'm fine. Staying with my aunt for now. Please don't contact me again." I stared at the screen, my chest tightening. I wanted to respect her wishes, but it felt like losing her all over again. I knew she was overwhelmed by everything, but I did not know why she acted like that, even though she was abused by her mother. I know she's been through a lot, and I genuinely wanted to help her. With Anna out of reach, I focused on protecting my son and moving forward, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Rachel wasn't done. So I started digging. I talked to neighbors, asked questions, and pieced together bits of information. What I found only confirmed what I'd suspected all along. Rachel's behavior had been a problem long before this. One neighbor told me she'd seen Anna locked out of the house more than once, standing on the porch in tears while Rachel screamed at her from inside. Another said Rachel was known for flying off the handle, yelling at anyone who crossed her. "She's been like that for years," the woman said. "Poor Anna's had to deal with it her whole life." Then, there were the financial issues. Turns out Rachel had a history of taking out loans in other people's names. Her ex-husband, her siblings, and even Anna. One neighbor mentioned she'd overheard a heated argument between Rachel and a landlord about unpaid rent. "She's a piece of work, that one," the neighbor said with a shake of her head. Hearing all of this was both validating and heartbreaking. Rachel wasn't just a difficult person, she was toxic, and Anna had been trapped in that environment for years. It made me even more certain that I'd done the right thing by pressing charges. But it also made me worry about Anna. As the days turned into weeks, the legal side of things started to pick up. Rachel had been charged with trespassing and making a false report, and her court date was approaching. I'd already given my statement to the police, and my lawyer assured me that the video footage would make our case solid. But that didn't make it any easier. The family drama was ramping up too. Rachel's siblings were furious, claiming I'd ruined her life and turned the family against her. My late wife's parents were caught in the middle, trying to stay neutral but clearly uncomfortable with the whole situation. The court date arrived quicker than I expected. I stood in the hallway of the courthouse, clutching my lawyer's notes like a lifeline. My stomach churned as I thought about what was at stake, not just for me, but for Anna and my son. Rachel's actions had disrupted all our lives, and now it was time to face the consequences. The courtroom was small, but tense. Rachel sat with her lawyer, looking smug as ever. She glanced my way once, smirking, like she thought this was all some kind of game she was about to win. My lawyer started strong, presenting the surveillance footage as evidence. The videos spoke for themselves. Rachel breaking into my apartment, twice, yelling at Anna, and outright saying she didn't care if my son was left alone. Rachel's lawyer tried to spin it, arguing that Rachel had been acting out of concern for Anna's well-being. My client was merely trying to protect her daughter from an exploitative situation, he said. But things turned when Anna was called to testify. I hadn't seen her in weeks, and my heart ached as she took the stand. She looked nervous, her hands trembling as she adjusted the microphone. But there was a determination in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "Anna," the judge began, "can you describe your relationship with the defendant, Rachel, and your experience working for the plaintiff?" Anna nodded slowly, her voice shaky at first. "Rachel is my mom," she said, "and I've been babysitting for Alex for a few months now." Then she was asked about her relationship with her mother. Anna hesitated, her eyes darting toward Rachel. Her mom's expression hardened, and for a moment I thought Anna might freeze. But then, she took a deep breath and said something that made the entire room go silent. "It wasn't good," she admitted. "My mom, she has a temper. She yells a lot and sometimes she gets physical. I've had to leave the house before because I didn't feel safe." Rachel immediately shouted, "That's a lie!" But the judge silenced her with a stern warning. Anna continued, her voice gaining strength. "That night she kicked me out after an argument and she hit me. I went to Alex's house because I didn't have anywhere else to go. He let me sleep on the couch. He didn't do anything wrong. He was just trying to help." As Anna spoke, more details began to surface. She talked about how Rachel had taken out credit cards in her name without her permission, how she'd been locked out of the house more times than she could count, and how Rachel constantly belittled her, calling her useless and a burden. The courtroom was silent except for Anna's voice. Even Rachel's family, who had been staunchly defending her up until now, looked uneasy. It was as if they were seeing a side of Rachel they hadn't wanted to acknowledge. When Anna finished, the judge looked at her kindly. "Thank you for your honesty," he said. "It takes a lot of courage to speak out like that." The judge didn't take long to make his decision. Rachel was found guilty of trespassing, making a false police report, and causing emotional distress. She was sentenced to community service and ordered to pay damages, both to me and to Anna. CPS also announced that they were launching a formal investigation into her parenting. As the verdict was read, Rachel's smug expression finally cracked. She shouted that it wasn't fair, that she was just trying to be a good mother. But no one was listening anymore. The truth was out, and there was no spinning it. A week after Rachel's arrest, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, Anna was standing there. She looked tired but calmer, her eyes less clouded with anger. "Can I come in?" she asked hesitantly. "Of course," I said, stepping aside. She sat down on the couch, the same one where she'd slept the night Rachel kicked her out. For a moment, neither of us said anything. Then she took a deep breath and started talking. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, "for yelling at you. For leaving. I was so scared and confused and I didn't know what to do." "You don't have to apologize," I said. "You've been through so much. I just want to make sure you're okay." Anna nodded, her fingers twisting nervously in her lap. "I've been staying with my aunt since the arrest. It's better, quieter, but I can't stop thinking about everything that happened. About my mom. She's not your responsibility," I said gently. "You deserve to live your life without fear, without being controlled by her." Anna looked down, her voice trembling. "I know, and I think I'm starting to realize just how bad it was." She's been like this for as long as I can remember, but I always thought maybe it was normal. Maybe I deserved it. My chest tightened. You didn't deserve any of it, Anna. None of this is your fault. She nodded again, tears welling in her eyes. I think I finally believe that. And it's because of you. You stood up to her when I couldn't. You didn't let her win. As the days turned into weeks, Rachel's world began to unravel. The CPS investigation into her parenting uncovered years of neglect and abuse. The financial records. Everything. The court eventually ruled that Rachel was unfit to have custody of Anna. Her parental rights were terminated. She moved out of the neighborhood shortly after, leaving behind the wreckage of her own making. With Rachel out of the picture, Anna began to thrive. She enrolled in college and started working part-time at a bookstore. She came over to visit my son regularly, and the bond they shared only grew stronger. Watching them together was a reminder of why I'd fought so hard, to give my son a safe, loving environment and to help Anna escape the cycle of abuse. For me, this past year has been too much. Losing my wife, stepping into the role of a single dad, and trying to protect Anna from a situation no one should ever have to face. There were moments I felt like I was drowning, like the weight of it all might crush me. Yet, through it all, I kept pushing forward, for my son, and for the life I promised my wife I'd give him. To all of you reading this who are dealing with life struggles alone, I just want to say, remember, you're stronger than you think. You're not alone, even if it feels that way sometimes. Keep going.